Hi, welcome again to another episode of Naturang Batas, Likas, Tama. I'm your host, Jemy, Gatdula. And our episode today is on about Becky's. And, well, it's actually the word that was introduced to me just now by our co-host, David Rosario. Well, anyway, it's actually about homosexuality and the Philippines. And we have a fine assortment of guests to discuss that topic. To my immediate left is our friend and almost always welcome guest, Dr. Raul Nidoy, who took up doctorate in theology from University of Navarre in Spain.
Yes.
And beside him is our is Rollie de los Reyes, the president of Courage Philippines.
Yes.
And beside him would be David Rosario of the University of Asian Pacific. I think the first question I'd like to throw to you guys is, well, just to lay it out on the line. So what is homosexuality?
Well, in my case, it's just maraming mga definitions about homosexuality, but I could surmise it into just one, which is homosexuality is a distortion of gender. I've been teaching young kids about gender, that's between a man and a woman, is the differences between a man and a woman. And homosexuality steps in as a distortion of them. And we're not saying that they...
Why is it a distortion?
It's a distortion because it's something that is not out of the natural design of God for man and a woman. And we're not saying na para abnormal sila. Which I mean to say, abnormal yung mga tao na nakakaranas ng homosexualidad. But what we're saying is that what happened to them is not normal. Hindi sila ang abnormal, pero what happened to them? It's like a person na napilayan o naputulan ng paa, no? It's something to that effect, no? That something went wrong along the way as they're growing up, no? That they're not able to go to their full potential because of that.
If I may examine this one a little bit more carefully, the problem kasi with talking about homosexuality, lalo na when you try to question some assumptions or some presumptions na accepted na ng most of the people, particularly sa media, is that pag you discuss this topic, you tend to raise a lot of emotions in people. And the probability is that you'll probably get labeled na sexist ka, or bigot ka, or you're being intolerant. It's always there. That's why it's very difficult to talk rationally about this. And having that said that in context, you mentioned something about hindi sila abnormal, pero at the same time, you're saying it's not normal. I mean, how can you reconcile those two statements? And I presume that there will be some homosexuals, obviously, that will be watching this show. So parang magiging language, okay, you're calling me hindi normal, pero at the same time, I'm not normal. So how does that work?
Can I just say something? Part of the problem of the confusion and the controversy is the lack of definition. Because yung sexual orientation, it has three elements. One is attraction, the other one is behavior itself, and the other one is self-identification. You say that you are homosexual. The first one, the orientation, is something that the attraction is not a choice in the vast majority of cases. Kasi it seems that there are psychological factors.
Yes.
Yung pangalawa,
You're saying it's not a choice?
it seems.
It seems, okay.
According to studies, the attraction is not a choice per se because there are psychological factors nga na parang napilayan, sabi niya nangyari sa'yo yun di ba? The behavior is a different thing because you are attracted, but then when you actually do the action, that's a different level. And then when you say self-identification is you already say that you are, and that's also a choice. The second and the third are choices.
So you're saying that in order for a person to be considered as homosexual, or as they say, bakla, bading, Becky, as the new word of the day, kailangan yung three things has to be there, has to be present.
I'm not an expert, but then what I'm just saying is that those three elements have to be taken into account. The Catechism uses the definition of relations between men and then or between women who have predominant or exclusive attraction. So it's a relation based on an attraction. I mean, that is what the Catechism says. At least that's the point of view of the Catholic Church. I suppose, I don't know if the psychologists have a different way of looking at it. or
But Rollie, I think kanina you mentioned something to the effect that parang along the way something
Yes.
happened.
Yes.
Does that indicate, give you, or is that statement we could interpret na homosexuality nga is actually a choice?
It's not actually a choice. Like sinabi ni Kuya Raul here, no? The attraction per se is not a choice. What we have learned in psychology is that gender identity doesn't happen actually in the teenage years. It happens in a very early stage, from 0 to 4.
Oh, okay.
Gender identification
Gender
starts
identification.
there, no? Kasi mapapansin natin pag yung mga bata, no, bagong panganak, no?
So, totoo ba yun na pag nakita mo yung 3-year-old pamangkin mo, naglalaro ng Barbie doll, dapat ba nervyusin ka na? I mean, kung lalaki yung pamangkin mong yun? Or?
Well, there has to be an alarm, pero not so much kasi kumaga it's up to you eh. How will you model being a man to him? No, marami akong kilala na although naglaro ng Barbie doll, nakipaglaro sa mga babae, turns out to be a man as well, no? Kasi ang deep conviction ng tao happens during that stage. Kaya nga maraming tao sinasabi, simula na nagkamulat ako, alam ko bakla na ako. But they didn't realize na simula nung pagkabata pa lang nila, doon na-form yung kanilang gender
I've
identity.
always thought kasi na habang bata ka, like at that age, parang you don't have any knowledge na ano yung difference between man and woman. Parang I've always thought na parang okay. Tapos I remember habang tumatanda ka, comes a certain age, parang ayaw mo pa kung if you're a guy, ayaw mo sa babae, you think of them as your kaaway, and then later on, wala ka na magawa kundi keep dating women or something. But the point is, you're saying at that age pa lang pala, there's already identification of ano.
Yes.
Okay.
And the identification comes, kanino magagaling? Who is the first nurturers of this child? It's the mother and the father. So the relationship of the mother and the father, the relationship of the mother to the child, the father to the child,
Yun.
all of this takes in place, and this resembles the gender identification of the child.
I read somewhere na ano na for women it's a little bit easier kasi ang first for any child, man or boy or girl, ang magiging first identification will always be with the mother.
Yes.
And the problem is that for the boy kasi they have to make a transition from identifying with the mother to the father.
There's an extra step that has
Pag
to
hindi
be
raw
made.
nangyari yun, then that's where the problem comes in.
Yes,
That holds true.
And that is why most Filipino boys become gay men, is because most of the mothers, I'm not saying all, but
Yes.
most Filipino mothers have a difficulty releasing the child,
Yun.
releasing the son
Okay,
towards
yes.
the fathers.
That's
Ang
a
problema
good
rin
point.
natin, yung dynamics natin dito sa mga
Totoo yan.
Filipino, maraming mga fathers ang passive.
Or-
Yung hindi mo nakikita ang
Or could I
presensya
say,
sa bahay.
could I say because of the fact marami rin lalaki kasi OFW.
Yes,
that
the
they are-
exodus of the father. So
Malaking
what I will
factor
call.
yan,
no?
Okay. But I saw somewhere sa isang ano, to all of you guys who watch yung TV show yung Sex and the City,
Yes.
si Cynthia Nixon, who's one of the all of a sudden, bigla sinabi niya, I'm gay. I'm a lesbian. Para bang, and then she really made a pronouncement na I'm actually lesbian by choice. Para bang, I chose, namili ako between having a relationship with a man and relationship with a woman. Para mas masarap daw for her having a relationship with a woman. Well, of course, I agree with her kasi I'm a guy. But is that true? You think, or is she being misleading? Because na sinasabi nga niya na she chose to be a homosexual.
Well, on that case, well, first of all, disclaimer, I don't really know much about homosexuality kasi hindi pa ako nakadanas nito.
By the way, also,
but,
I don't know much about Sex and the City, okay? So, that's a disclaimer as well.
Pero yung, when people say this as a choice, kasi I have also encountered other people who say they are homosexuals by choice. Tulad nung sinabi kanina, there are 3 stages. It starts with attraction. Ngayon, kung by choice yan, ibig sabihin, alam mo may attraction, pumatol ka dun sa attraction. Therefore, you are voluntarily making yourself homosexual. Is this something that is right? Perhaps not, because even though it is your choice, you have to take into consideration may mga moral ano pa yan. Pero yes, as far as I know, it is possible na makarinig ka ng ibang tao na by choice, they say, ako na lang ay magiging homosexual.
Yeah, but most likely, they will not really be considered as homosexuals. They'll probably parang they're just using it to further a career.
Parang mga poser lang,
For
gano'n.
poser. I know of one kasi, di ba yung former girlfriend ni Ellen DeGeneres, I forgot, she was an actress and then...
Portia de Rossi, no?
No, before that. Then nag-revert back siya to having heterosexual relationships for some reason. But if we could move on, there have been some notable homosexuals, I think, in history, right? I mean,
Yes.
some of the, correct me if I'm wrong, sometimes they point to Julius Caesar Payata as one of those people who had homosexual relationships.
Alexander the
Alexander the Great,
Alexander the
particularly in
Great.
that movie pero isn't it because hindi naman talaga homosexual to mga to, pero because of the homosexual agenda, all of a sudden they're saying all of these people are gay. Parang I grew up with Bert and Ernie, and then all of a sudden apparently they're gay din daw. How true is that? Is it really parang it's more part of the homosexual agenda, or there are really a lot of people in history that are gay?
Well, what I could say in culture-wise, there are some cultures that make some homosexual acts a rite of passage to adulthood, no?
Okay.
But it doesn't.
What about doon sa Sparta kaya? Doon sa 300? You think there's a homosexual subtext there?
Sa Sparta, I'm not so
Kasi
sure
lahat
about
sila
it.
naka-abs, perfect.
Talagang. Pero you know what? Ang nakikita ko dyan is actually idealization of what it means to become a man, no? Like, eto yung mga abs na ganyan, makikita mo sa mga billboard. Sabi ko nga, dati, ang White Castle whiskey, di ba? Babae lang, tapos babae lang yung nakapostura
I've never understood yung connection ng babae na kabayo, White Castle.
Pero magtataka ka ngayon, no? Some advertisers are now exposing bodies of men. And these are
si Mark Wahlberg yata who started that trend, right? Because of his
the abs.
He appeared in underwear.
Yeah. So, ang nakikita ko dyan is parang a distortion of what it means to become a man. Kaya some people, and not all people, have those kind of body physiques, no? And that's why most men, if they're not homosexual, they're insecure about their gender, no? So it doesn't mean that although you are not bakla, no, you're already secured in your manhood. Marami mga lalaki na insecure pa rin sa kanilang pagkalalaki, and that's why nagpo-pose sila, no? You have this Robin Padilla style na kailangan talagang macho ko, bubugbugin kita and so forth, but it's just a facade, no? A pose. Meron namang mga tapong, sabi ko nga parang ding-dong Dantes na kailangan nakatingin kayo lahat sa akin. Pag merong hindi nakatingin sa akin, I feel bad about myself because ang vainglory niya comes from his appearance and how he attracts women or men at the same time.
I have this datum, no? Na nabasa ko na dalawang studies na yun na 50% of those who had homosexual actions before the age 15 voluntarily gave it up after age 15. So may implication yon.
I mean, if they gave it up before 15, later on they will voluntarily
No,
give
they
it up.
did. I mean, 50% of those who had homosexual behavior have spontaneously given it up after age 15. So, ibig sabihin, ang implication is that it is a choice, the behavior itself, no? Because they just chose. And then and also yung change from homosexuality to normal, it can be done. In fact, that's done spontaneously. And also to your question, yung Julius Caesar, mga Alexander the Great, it's a possibility that they tried it because there's some people who are adventurous, and then they gave it up after some time, no? But it's also true what you have mentioned that merong ang homosexual agenda din, no? Na talagang yung mga DVD.
Yeah.
Minsan makikita mo, meron na madami ng DVD na mga homosexual relations. Yeah, pero dati wala yun
Yes.
So ibig sabihin talagang pinalalaganap. There is in fact a group na who's really trying to promote it.
Yeah.
So totoo yun. Kailangan naman natin malaman yun.
Well, we'll have to wrap up this segment, but obviously this is quite an interesting discussion. Please stay with us and we'll discuss more about homosexuality when we come back. Thank you.